Hello, everybody, and welcome to Keep It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra McGullis. And before I introduce our guest and she tells us this amazing story, I'd like to ask each and every one of you to take a moment to support the show by hitting like, subscribe, share, and comment so that these videos can circulate through the whole interweb of algorithms that I have no control over, so that this show can wind up on someone else's social platform and they can learn about Kristin's amazing journey. So, Kristin, we're going to talk about Hurricane Helene and how it hit the East Coast. And so, it's only been a year. It's only been a year. It seems like it's been long gone and forgotten by many who are not in your area. So I want to talk about what was Kristin doing, end of August 2024, and then how the end of September completely changed your life. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. So I was working as a warehousing distribution quality manager for Cardinal Healthcare. Worked from home since 2016, so the COVID thing didn't really affect me. I'd already been working from home. Spent a lot of my time doing arts and preparing for small festivals. That's what I was doing the night Helene hit, because there was a festival coming up in October. So I live in Morganton, in Burke County, North Carolina. And, not being prepared, not understanding what was getting ready to happen. It was just another night of what we thought was going to be heavy rain. I have 2 grown children, called to make sure they were okay. My daughter-in-law was actually in Germany at the time, so she wasn't here. My son was in McDowell County. I made my daughter, who was 19 at the time, come home against her, her own judgment. She didn't think it was going to be a big deal. And we were just like sitting ducks, kind of not knowing what was going to happen. Power goes out unexpectedly. Little did we know it was going to be 2 weeks just for us, and we were lucky. Water was gone for probably, it was about 2 weeks, but then, we had unsafe drinking water. And again, we're very lucky. Our house was still standing and the tree barely, scraped the side of my daughter's room by inches. It was pure chaos. And the fact that looking back, we didn't know what was going on outside of us because we lost all of our phone signal. We had no Wi-Fi or phone, no text, no social media. Couldn't contact our family members and ask them how they were. It was very scary, and you felt out of control, but the most beautiful thing in the world, which was helpers helping. And that started the minute it cleared up, the minute it started raining. Neighbors were running chainsaws, chopping the trees out of the yard, pulling trees out of the road, helping people get limbs and trees off their homes. And that's just within 1 block area of where I lived in Morganton. It was an immediate jump to action in the community, and it didn't matter who you were, what your backgrounds were. If somebody needed water or somebody needed food or a tree cut, there was always somebody within arm's length distance, offering to be assistant. And again, my story started with right down the street. We had a yoga studio that was collecting donations and handing out free supplies. And it was a place of connection where people just kind of wandered in, and some people lost everything and they had no clue what they needed. So it was these natural helpers who just said, okay, I can't just sit here anymore. I have to go out and see what I can do. And even though I can't run a chainsaw, I did learn how to sharpen chains at night. We had our headlamps and our generators, and doing what we could at the end of each evening by the light of a fire or a headlamp, for the folks who did have chainsaws to go back out each day. So, myself as like that maternal kind of person, I always have been, I felt better at that supply center, stocking the shelves, helping people pick out what they needed when they came in. And then that just kind of kept growing. I was contacted by somebody else who knew I was in warehousing and distribution, said, hey, I need some help, McDowell Glass. And within a week, they needed to go back to business, so not very quickly. It seems that time period is so crazy for me to look back on it, how much happened in just a couple weeks after this devastating event for all of us. Just within 3 weeks, I'd been to 2 centers already, was asked if I could find another place. Somebody said, hey, I have this warehouse. So I got their supplies left over. Churches and moose lodges and other businesses somehow, heard that I had some space. So we had that place full in probably 70% full in 2 weeks, and trucks that were turned around going up the mountain. I realized very quickly there was a distribution problem, right? There was a logistics issue. These tiny towns like Burnsville, Bakersville, Barnardsville, they just did not have large warehouses. So they needed a huge amount of supplies that were being consumed quickly. So it was like this feast famine, like, oh my gosh, we need water. And then, no, stop the water. We don't have anywhere to put it, and then it would go quickly. And it just kept happening with food and with fuel and all the things that they needed. They just didn't have anywhere to put it. So that 14,000 square foot warehouse in my mind was that replenishment center. That's what I had experienced and learned in warehousing and distribution. Is Cardinal, as a global warehousing company, they have these large warehouses that don't ship directly to, say, a customer. And in this place would have been, our main focus wasn't getting to individuals, which, we did get requests and we managed to fill those, but we were trying to replenish the supply hubs that were in the center and up the mountains and hard to get to. And that just kept growing. And, the warehouse we were in, it didn't have power or water. So we were there until February, working out of a warehouse that didn't have, things that made it safe for us to be in. And we had another podcaster, Average Joe, come. He installed a solar generator that gave us power. So we were working 15, 16-hour days, 7 days a week, up until probably January, to where it we got back to like maybe 10-hour days, 7 days a week.
It's still a lot. And remember, you worked for the company who was the largest distribution of IVs, which everybody knew. Everyone in the medical field knew, oh my gosh, we're not going to get our IV supply. So it was crisis mode for dialysis centers, for hospitals, for nurses that go to home visits, that are life-saving IVs, right?
Yeah.
And so you're used to
Cardinal. I worked at Cardinal Health until May of 2025. So I was standing up and managing Mountain Aid Project and maintaining that full-time position as a warehousing distribution manager, who I had Baxter Healthcare. That was my 3PL customer. So we managed their inventory throughout all of that.
So did you create Mountain Aid Project?
I did.
Yes, you are the founder. Come on, girl. Shout that from the rooftops. Kristin Johnson, founder of Mountain Aid Project, sitting here telling us an amazing journey that she's been on and is still on. So keep going. So come January, you're down to 10 days a week. You're still working your full-time job and you're still doing all of this. And you're a bit frazzled. I remember that. You're a bit frazzled, a bit tired. And let's talk about no power, no water. That means there's no toilets, people. There's no place to, get water, but grab a bottle of water if it's available to you to have. So, you got to pack your own little lunch and find your own little hole to dig for your, excrements.
Yeah.
We pee a lot.
Yeah. And if you think about there in the first couple months up through Christmas, we had cases of water being donated, but when you think about how much water it takes to, say, flush your toilet or, to heat up to wash dishes, and the amount of trash that was being generated, it was all of these things that you just did not really think about. And the delay of getting out, it's like the needs were changing every day. And social media was amazing. We couldn't have done it without social media, but it would be, somebody would find a needs list from 4 weeks ago, get that out there, and then be sending things that were already, we didn't need it anymore. So that was a constant issue too. Being in close contact with helpers, there's an episode of Mr. Rogers where he's talking about in a crisis or in a situation, a disaster, always look for the helpers. And it's like I watched this beautiful thing just happen and grow, and it's still growing. Working in this warehouse with people I did not know before this. They were my soul family. It was the connection that we were building and the growth that we were experiencing through service. I mean, that's what Mountain Aid, that's the heart of Mountain Aid, is like the connection between humans and the through service, right? We heal through helping a lot of times. I do. That's myself and a lot of people around me. And Mountain Aid is not just, I've realized the truckloads of supplies were crucial and a part of this. And we helped people, put food in their families' bellies and make sure they had water and warmth. But Mountain Aid, as anybody who comes here to help and to offer their time and their presence, that's just as important as the other service projects. We've created a family, and I hope to continue to nourish people, not just from that supply perspective, but from that soul perspective. When people come here, they find a tribe. And although that's not as easily quantitative as it is how many bottles of water you can, send out, but it's just as equally important.
Well, I'm sure it makes you think when you look at the supplies and then you look at the devastation that happened in your area, which was so unexpected, so out of left field. I mean, houses were floating, in the water. People were in them or on top of them. You had roads that were wiped out. I mean, you couldn't even identify where what neighborhood was and what wasn't, right? I mean, everything was gone. And the fact that there's no communication, so you have to rely on only X amount of demographics out, like maybe 100 200 feet out here to these people, and they become your main connection and communication, and then around. And once you got that settled in Morganton, then you were able to branch out a little bit and see, oh my gosh, this is bigger than we ever thought. And so for you to create this, and then of course we know how the God source works. Boom, I happen to have an empty warehouse just sitting here ready for you to store things. But that sounds good. Although you got to work the deliveries and who's delivering what. And then you got to have organization and equipment. How many times I saw you on what was it, the backhoe, the back tractor or something, see you on that thing. And I'm like, you go, girl, because I wouldn't know how to operate that thing. A little like mini lift and all that stuff. Kristin's out there just doing her like thing all day long. Like just, I don't know. She's an Energizer bunny, but these things take strategy, everything. And then once you get it in there and have it accounted for, and then you have to get it out to the people effectively because roads are down, right? How did they get to you without putting themselves in danger? You've got families with babies and no water and no diapers and formula. You've got people without medications, and your whole town jumped in and you took leadership of that and created Mountain Aid Project, and you survive on donations.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have that link in here at the end. So if anybody wants to donate or wants to know more about it, because this is going to take years to unwind this disaster, for sure.
And we're almost on this kind of second round of issues. We have low income, vast majority of these mountain rural counties, and the setback is not done. People are still, they were out of work, they had damage, they had to cover things their insurance wouldn't, or certain government programs wouldn't cover. And then maybe they thought their house was going to be fine because just, they had a crawl space that flooded and it didn't actually raise into their home. But now they're starting to see mold issues and getting illnesses, with children or elderly who are still in these homes. And they didn't realize that mold had set in, and it's getting worse and worse. So, there are still programs who are rebuilding and repairing, but people are afraid to come say, I didn't realize that I had this damage. And it is a 100% direct effect of the flooding, that occurred in their area. So we really try to be that encouragement where if somebody says, I have this issue, I didn't realize it was an issue then, connecting them to the available programs. And, the nonprofit world here it's indescribable. Like the way that we all jumped in and tried to do everything. And then pretty quickly realized, okay, this one is good at food. This one has actually access to a warehouse that has light and has power and water. And, Mountain Aid was the volunteer and the project coordinators. And we all just said, let's find our niche and let's work together. And it's still going strong, all these different little nonprofits working together without the funding. This year they made that decision where the governor's office said, we're going to use the money and create this group called Grow and See. And don't get me wrong, they've done the best that they can, I feel like, with what they had and what they knew. But previous disasters, they deployed that money to the nonprofits, the community who was doing the work. So we've had a huge delay in funding. And of course, it's not the most stable, I guess, it doesn't feel stable from like a federal funding and a state funding right now with the state of affairs the way it is, in government offices right now. And so we've done this on our own dimes and on the loving donations from people, not just in North Carolina, but from all over the country.
Well, when you think about a catastrophe happening, if you were to watch the news, you see FEMA, you see, what is it? What's the first aid people? Red Cross. So you see Red Cross and you see FEMA and you see, and you think that all of these government agencies are descending upon this catastrophe and, whipping it all into shape, and it may take 6 months or a year, but they're all in there. But that is not how it occurs. And you've got to go through all these compliance policies and applications to get anything, which is so laborious. And you almost want to throw your hands up and go, why the hell do we have a government trying to run and help us, because they're not helping us? And then you've got, correct. So that's what I want you to talk a little bit about that, because when you say, oh, we've, thank God we've had personal funding, and thank God, people have been, $10 here, $20 here, $100 or $500, and it's all adding up and it's helping. You guys are still working pretty much, for nothing. Yeah. And you've got all these people volunteering their time, their sweat, their talent, their treasury, which is their money. But this is still an ongoing thing. But tell me about, so I don't want you to slight that over. Like, I don't want, this, we have government agencies that are designed to come in during this time, but let's talk about their abandonment.
Well, and there's not a lot of education on how the programs are supposed to work. I
want you to talk about it. Talk about it, please.
In week 2, where we're just now starting to get communications back up and we're starting to get requests to say, come muck a house out that's full of mud. And we said, hey, we've got hands, we're sending them. They would be like, well, don't come yet because FEMA hasn't come yet. We want them to see this devastation in the house. And it was like this push and pull. And, the mountain areas in the Appalachia, they're a proud community. They don't necessarily welcome government agencies in. And so that was, they decided to not go door to door, to set up in community centers or buildings and said, you come to us. These people didn't have cars. They floated down the river. Like, there was a huge part of the community who could not go to the sites that were set up for your FEMA application. There were all kinds of barriers that I hope were documented in lessons learned, in situations like this. There were, and this is from my own personal experience, this is not hearsay. I had volunteers who I still talk to today who have come from out of state back to Mountain Aid Project to continue to help. They were in the area of Black Mountain at a community donation hub that was taken over by FEMA. FEMA showed up and said, you must leave and the supplies stay here. We will take this over. So,
and yet they were your supplies.
Yes, had been donated.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had the 2 volunteers I'm speaking of now showed up at my warehouse, 7 p.m. in the middle of the week. And we're like, hey, we heard you needed some help. And we just got kicked out of a supply hub in Black Mountain, and we're here to help. So can we help? And they stayed for weeks helping me organize, deploy, call for donations. And they had to walk away from a center that they had helped set up that was community built.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody was made aware of like what the plan was, where did those supplies go, how were they going to distribute it? How do you come into a community that you have no connections and you're not familiar with the land or the territory and think that you're going to do a better job than the community itself?
Yeah.
Like if there was some type of collaborative effort there, if FEMA had shown up in a way that was like, hey, we have processes and things we think could help, let's work together, instead of this, it felt like a hostile takeover almost,
Mm-hmm.
of all the work that had been done.
Mm-hmm.
And it created a lot of distrust. They were, do you now get all of these supplies like as being FEMA distributed when it came from the people within?
Mm-hmm.
And there was no approach to like what happened. There was no explanation as to what they were going to do. And so, sure, people disbanded, but they went and found other local community centers and nonprofits to continue to help. Those people weren't discouraged, but I also don't think that we understood what FEMA was there to do exactly, because it felt like rejection. It felt like every time somebody was filling out an application, they were like, be prepared, you're going to get rejected. And it's like, okay, they don't have power. Like they're struggling with day-to-day just survival, and to expect them to somehow find the space, the equipment, the help to continue to submit application and more details in the midst of this it's unreasonable. So there were people, I'm sure, who didn't go back after their first or even second rejection and try to prove that they needed, the help.
Yeah, because there's a whole process you have to go through. I mean, even to get yourself a nonprofit, you got to go fill out all the paperwork. So then if you've got county and state that are no longer a building and there's no one working in them, and even if you submit it via the computer from somewhere, if you might have internet, it's going into the abyss with all the other million backups and no one to retrieve it to even do that. So for you to even become a nonprofit, I'm feeling your pain here. But I really wanted to talk about the government agencies because, again, if we were to like just watch the blanket news, everything's true on there, right? And you see, oh, look at that, the helicopters are going in and they're doing this, and oh, look, they're handing out food. Well, really what they're doing is they've come over and emptied your pantries and they're handing out your food that you've stored for yourself and others, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm
this is out of a sci-fi.
Yes, it was, like I said, I'm an eternal optimist, and so I expected that everybody I ran into in every agency who came in to be the helpers, so it was very disarming to witness, like, wait, are we working together? Because we should be working together. Like it should not be this us against them thing, but there was definitely like division and things happening and unsureness, and why are they here? What are they doing? Who's here to help? How do we get there? Who do we contact? It was just utter chaos, and the only thing I feel like that was just consistent was the community banding together. It was like if you had trust and you were from this area, that's who was doing the work.
Yeah, I can feel that. And and during this, it's not just about storage of food and water, and it's also, how are you getting people to and from safety? How are you getting them to and from medical care? How, and then the people that are coming in to assist, where can they stay? Who can they stay with? So you're bunking up with somebody, sleeping on the floor somewhere, and our shout out goes to all of you who have poured your heart and soul into, I'm in this because this is my family, these are my neighbors, this is my DNA bloodline, this is my God source duty here, is to assist in the best way that I possibly can. But to feel like you're not just tied by your wrist, you're tied by your ankles, and you're anchored down, so you can't really move around as much as you want to because of these government agencies not releasing the funds that are so desperately needed. Because, you know, it's like, okay, your house is down, you're waiting, you could wait months before someone comes to give that inspection and give that okay. And then you got
Yes.
to go through the process for that check, right? To come
Yep.
out. Now, times that times a million,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not like they're flying in agency, contractors to come in and do all the inspecting for you, or temporary jobs. They're keeping their same people. Well, I'm only one person, I can only do 20 things a day, blah, blah, blah. So
Yep.
I feel disappointed for you that
Mm-hmm.
our government let you down in that way. And this is nothing new, but this is one of the newest things that devastated, that was on the news so much. And again, like I said, it's been 14 months, 15 months now, not even. And I don't want this project that you've created to go away, because there's still years of work to do,
There
right?
is, and there's a part of it from the trauma piece that people don't
Yes.
really talk about that much.
Yes.
And, watching somebody who lost their entire home
And
again,
lives were lost.
a lot. I mean, again, it's
Pets,
those
pets.
things where they're never going to be the same, and the impact will not ever be fully quantified, from the hurt and the loss and the trauma that these folks experienced. And, we want to come rushing in and say, let us clean this house out, or let us take all of your damaged items. And I mean, that's their lives, in their homes. And we just did a clean out of a house actually in Morganton on the anniversary. And we had people there helping and volunteering who were also survivors, who had also lost their homes. And it was to feel and watch them relive almost the devastation. It was just a year later, 365 days later, we were taking out stuff from a house that had been completely flooded. People just aren't always ready, to get rid of everything they've collected and things from their families that's been handed down. And you have to be really cognizant of that. It's like, if we see somebody who needs help, of course we want to come help them, but we have to make sure they're emotionally ready to let that go, to let some of the things go that need to be taken out.
That is a really, really important part that you just mentioned, because I think we're forgetting, because we're doing the triage in the beginning, right? How do we get everyone to safety? How do we get your, clothes on your back? How do we get you out of the cold? How do we, bundle you up? How do we make sure you're okay? And then take the next step. And to, first of all, have the emotional trauma of having the bomb just dropped right in your area overnight. No one expected it, really, in the form of a hurricane. Having your government let you down, and knowing, oh, holy crap, I was never prepared for this. I wanted, and I know now that you're organizing structure so that if this ever occurs again elsewhere, maybe people can look to how you have formatted and organized this to work in a more systematically and productively to the general people who are really suffering.
Yeah.
But I never thought about, hey, we need to come in. You've got mold, you've got dirt, the house is inhabitable, but we have to get all your personal items out because we have to go to the next step of, demolition and so on and so forth. And then knowing that your family photos are there, knowing that, your daughter's first tooth or shoes are in a bag, right? That your entire life of all your memories of everything and that you love now needs to go into a dumpster. And you have to watch it because you have to assist with it.
Mm-hmm.
So you lose everything.
Yeah.
Fire is different. It's gone. You can't quite see it. It's not quite tangible. But when you're picking up boxes of belongings that are not salvageable and they have to go into a dumpster because it's the next step to possibly demolish your home to start over, that's devastating. That actually kind of makes my heart very sad.
I mean, it's delayed. I think it causes delay in people saying, okay, I'm ready, come rebuild. Because I'm sure they're looking for every last piece that they could salvage, you know?
Sure. And then times that times, thousands and thousands and thousands of homes before anyone can come in and then begin the process to
Yeah.
rebuild that neighborhood, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of moving pieces there. So I know that you've really gone through a lot of struggles because as much as you're giving, you haven't really given back to yourself a lot. So you've been running on
Yeah.
cellular depletion is the word that I'm hearing right now. And cellular siphoning. There we go. That was even a better word. Thank you, Spirit. And so I know that you get a lot of gratitude and your heart is filled every time that you help someone else who's you can just see the look on their face of you're a lifeline, right? What are you doing to help yourself to be strong and stable so that you can continue this work?
I definitely have a body that will go into protest if it gets too far out of, being taken care of. Learning to find my peace and take moments to breathe and to disconnect. We can't do it without these devices we're on right now, which becomes a 24/7 anxiety bell.
Yes.
Like messages on the social media platforms, text messages, phone calls, Google Voice, email. And there are moments where I have to put that in another room and I have to just pet my dogs and eat a meal and apologize profusely when I come back for missing, questions or people who've reached out. But it's become very obvious that, I have been out of balance for over a year with this because it's just like I couldn't stop. And it was my trauma response. Like my trauma response was I can't stop. If I stop, somebody's going to suffer. And accepting that, like, I'm one person, but I will say that all the connections and every person who's come in, I've watched it grow and the impact grow. And it's not just me. That's so silly. Nothing stopped. And when I took an hour to just breathe and eat, I'm so good at encouraging the people around me. You've got to go. You've got to do this. You've got to take care of yourself. That age old, your cup has to be full. You have nothing else to pour didn't make any sense to me. Like, I understood it in a way, but man, to experience that in real time, in real life, to understand that you have to keep your own cup filled. And I'm still not really great at it, but I'm surrounded by loving, caring people who will mirror my care for them for me. So I really appreciate that so much.
Kristin, that's very powerful because in order for us to give someone else 5 hours, we've got to find at least an hour or two in there to rejuvenate and stabilize our own nervous system and regulations of our physical body, not to mention our mental and our emotional state, because watching others suffer is very emotional, right? And then we get the recycling thoughts, that create more of the emotion, which is a heavier, dense energy to carry around. But at the same time, it's uplifting when you've given assistance. But if we're not giving to ourselves, we're being a disservice,
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
So what would you like? How can our listeners best support you and Mountain Aid Project?
So, I've had to pivot and change Mountain Aid's focus and future multiple times based on, need, availability, resources. So I've gone from large warehouse and distribution logistics to, clothes came in the mountains. Like, I had a mountain of clothes higher than me standing tall, like 3 of them. And it was so much work. And how can we keep this out of the landfill and make this useful? So I went from a thrift store to try to generate revenue idea to where we've landed now, which is 318 Bouchelle Street in downtown Morganton, to a community hub cafe where, again, I want to honor and continue to support Mountain Aid Project and these other local nonprofits to where we can generate revenue, have this place of you can come here and look and see what projects are available and see where we're working and how you can help. almost, if you think of it like a chamber of commerce for nonprofits, come get the information, come make the contacts with the people who are helping. And we saved a lot of the clothes, and we're doing a people over profit line. So you can come hand paint a t-shirt with us. We're going to start printing them here, trying to generate revenue and kind of have this exchange with the community. Come connect with us. Come do a small art project that's going to help raise money to keep funding these projects and the people who still need the help after Helene. And have a baked good and some coffee.
I love it. And then, the viewers, Kristin left her job, in April 2025 to do this full time because she felt like her soul was being pulled between two different positions, and one of which was more of a heart-centered, God-sourced position, where she felt she could do more good and leave an imprint, hopefully for others to read. Do this next time a disaster hits your area, because I think you're writing a policy, procedure, and a handbook, or at least you should be. And you'll get to that. You'll get to that. I didn't mean to dump on you there.
No, we are. Yeah. We've been talking about it since probably when we got the breather, maybe March. Again, we were having daily phone calls, went to twice a week. Now we're down to once a week with this collaborative group. And that's a huge part, is like disaster response preparation.
Yeah.
It's containers. I'm working with Project Your Home, Heroes Among Us, Loving Hands Bear Closet, United Christian Alliance, and like the focus is, how do we get this container that has all of the supplies to deploy in a disaster with instructions, that even somebody who has no clue what they're doing could open this container, read the instructions, how to triage help and how to get communications up and going, all the things, the lessons learned that we all experienced. Again, what is the process to be prepared to prevent the amount of just delay and destruction, the things that happen because we weren't prepared.
Yeah. I just know how I feel when I short circuit when my own Wi-Fi goes out for an hour.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I mean, imagine your cell phone is like fail.
Yeah. And we know, even through like the early months of COVID, our phones were doing that because the phone lines were being overused. Right. And so, I just know for me, not having that connection to the outside world is you severed a lifeline for me, especially if I can't get in touch with my family or my loved ones. Right. And so that's great if everyone's looking on Facebook and other alternatives to find out if you're safe. But if you don't have any way to post it, there's a lot of unknowns, which create collectively an emotional cloud of sadness and worry and concern, again, which is lower frequency. And when we have these issues, we have to be able to have something to go, hey, let me open this box. Okay, this tells me how to get communication up. This tells me what's the first thing to do. What's the second thing to do? This tells me this. Okay, let's follow this to the best of our ability and triage this without as much chaos. Because when you've got the blind leading the blind, when nobody knows and they're looking for leadership, when there's some kind of trauma or emergency happening, people are looking for a leader. And if someone isn't prepared to step up and be the leader and maybe have a box to help guide them, you could make things smoother. So first of all, you did that successfully and you're continuing to do it. And now you're creating something in case this occurs anywhere else, that people can have that. So maybe that's a box you could put together on the nonprofit and sell that. So everybody, every town, every has one of them. I don't know. That's just a thought that came through.
It's a project in play, Project Your Home, along with Project Skyline and another business, Midland. There's several companies and nonprofits who have this bag now, that they're working to design for deployment and disaster, have it ready.
I love it. I love it. I did not know that, but that was the message that was coming through.
Yeah.
So Kristin, we're going to have your links in the description, but what I would like to know is, how can people donate? How can people be of service? How can people get in touch with Mountain Aid Project and see, maybe their company or personally, you know, what they could do to help, whether it's $5, $100, a donation of supplies they may have. You know, it could be canned goods, it could be anything. I don't know
Yes.
what, you know, because some people may say, oh, we're not allowed to take that, right? Because there's
Right.
some things you can't take from someone because you don't know what
Right.
it is. Like you would never take anyone's home medications and take them in
Right.
and pass them out, right?
Right.
So I'm
Correct.
only saying that out loud because some viewers may not understand that things have to have there's a policy, procedure, and a protocol of what you can and cannot take. So before someone just dumps it off at you, it's like loading your car up with half your house and going to Goodwill, and then you get there and find out Goodwill can't take half of what you just took. So you
Yes.
got to figure out
and
where
that
else
happened.
to put it. Exactly.
You're dead on. That happened in the crisis where people were like, I have all these clothes and I don't want to throw it away. I'll just send it there. And like, you know, there was a time where we needed the warm clothes, but we were getting prom dresses and heels, and not that, you know, those aren't needed somewhere, but it just wasn't the time. You know, it was taking space and volunteer hours, you know.
I'm gonna go
Again,
dig a
not that
ditch.
we weren't grateful.
Yeah, but I could just see it. I'm gonna go dig a ditch and clean out some mold in somebody else's prom dress and heels because
Sequins.
that's all I have to wear today. That would
Right.
be hilarious.
It was wild, but no, to
Yeah.
your point, you know, we are opening a cafe, and we're trying to figure out that strategy of
Mhm.
as we're doing baked goods, it's going to be suggested pricing, so everything's kind of going to be donation based. Anything left over will not go to waste. We're going to be pairing up with, you know, our local food banks and things like that. If you want to purchase a shirt, those are coming soon. You want to donate a bag of flour. You want to take a gas for the volunteers who are driving up. You know, every Wednesday we drive up to Newland. Group of volunteers picks up Mercy Chef. Mercy Chef is in the area, and they have fully cooked meals that we pick up and take to a distribution hub in Newland, help serve the community there. You know, there are a lot of things. All of us are doing this, you know, on our own time and dime, and it's okay. I will do it till I cannot anymore. And sometimes if it's not so comfortable to give a dollar amount, which we always appreciate to help maintain this building and what we're doing from the community hub perspective, there are always supplies, building supplies that you can donate. If you have tools, again, a tank of gas for not just the people who are impacted, but these volunteers who are still out here and still doing the work every day.
Yeah, it takes a lot. It takes every piece of equipment and every piece of energy to do it. And I always think sometimes instead of trying to figure out something I can give, money is always an option for me because then I can say, hey, I have this. Use this for the exactly what you know you need it for and where you need to get it, that it keeps it up, you know, under the radar, where of, you know,
Yeah.
it's not junk and you don't have to worry about doing any harm. So there's funds are always, you can just can't turn those down. So I'll have your tree link down in the description as well. And you know, Kristin, I just I love you. You're a friend, you know, and I've been wanting to get this on the show and get this out but divine timing. It just worked out for today because obviously you have been extremely busy and had really no time to even brush your hair, brush your teeth, and go, hi, Sandy, let's talk on camera. You know,
Yeah, I washed my hair for you today.
well, thank you so very much. It looks beautiful. The curls are awesome. So anyone that's listening to this on social media, as in our Spotify, Amazon, iHeart, if you want to jump over to the YouTube channel, Sandra McEllis, you can see Kristin's beautiful face and our personalities and interaction, and the links will be listed here. So, you know, it is that time of year that I know we have a lot of bills and things coming up and we want to buy all these gifts, but sometimes it might be nice to say, I want to do this holiday a little different. And I don't, my family and I personally don't need a lot of stuff. Let's take what we were going to give each other, put it in a money envelope and say donate it to Mountain Aid Project, so it can be distributed to people who are in need of necessities, not just luxuries, right? Not just
Man,
something, not a special treat.
yeah, propane and ways to heat and keep people warm
Yes.
right now is the focus.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Kristin, I really want to come back at this again, and let's talk some more about it and see how things are developing and, you know, how Keep It Spiritually Simple can assist you and how we
Thank
can
you.
keep getting the word out here. And, you know, from my heart to yours, I just love you so much and thank you for everything. I'm so sorry that we don't live near each other.
No.
But because I would be right over there in the trenches with you to the best of my ability. But I just send so much love your way to all of you and the teams that you've coordinated and the nonprofits you've connected with that are in this just as much as you. So
Yeah,
thank you for taking that leadership.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Ah,
And
my
I love
pleasure.
you.
I love you. All right, everybody, please remember to like, subscribe, and by all means, it is super important to share this video with everyone because someone might be looking for where they could donate or what they could do to be charitable or to be of service. Maybe you're being called to be of service and you don't know where, and maybe this story will touch your heart as much as it has touched mine and as much as it's changed Kristin's life and Kristin's life with all of her teams that are involved with this. So let's end it there for right now. Say goodbye, Kristin. Bye, everybody. See you on the next video.